The red dust storms of Mars were notorious for claiming lives, but James Harrison had never seen one quite like this. Through the cockpit of his rescue shuttle, the swirling crimson clouds looked almost alive, illuminated by flashes of lightning that shouldn't exist in the thin Martian atmosphere. Something about this storm wasn't natural. "Base, I'm picking up unusual energy signatures," James reported, his hands steady on the controls as another gust buffeted his craft. "Request permission to investigate." "Negative, Harrison. Storm intensity is rising. Return to base immediately." James hesitated, watching his scanner. The energy spike was unlike anything he'd seen in his 15 years as a rescue pilot. "Base, these readings, they're not atmospheric. I think something's out there." Static crackled through his comm as another lightning bolt split the sky. Through the chaos of the storm, a faint glimmer caught his eye, metal reflecting the emergency lights of his craft. Without waiting for base's response, James banked his shuttle toward the anomaly. As he descended, the outline of a ship emerged from the dust, sleek, organic curves unlike any human vessel he'd ever seen. Its hull shimmered with an iridescent material that seemed to pulse with its own light, now dimming as he watched. The craft had crashed at an angle, half buried in the Martian soil. "Base, I've found a crashed vessel. Design unknown. Definitely not one of ours." The static was his only answer. The storm must be interfering with communications now. James completed his landing sequence 50 meters from the crash site. The emergency protocols were clear: wait for backup. But as he watched, a section of the alien ship's hull cracked open like a flower blooming, releasing a pale blue light into the storm. Someone was alive in there. Securing his helmet and checking his suit's integrity, James stepped out into the maelstrom. The wind howled around him as he made his way toward the crash site, each step carefully placed against the force of the storm. As he approached the opening, his suit's sensors detected an atmosphere venting from within, breathable, but not quite Earth normal. Inside the ship, emergency lights pulsed in a hypnotic rhythm. The architecture was both beautiful and disorienting, with corridors that curved in ways that seemed to defy Euclidean geometry. Following his helmet's atmospheric readings, James made his way deeper into the vessel. He found her in what appeared to be the control center. At first glance, she looked almost human, humanoid, at least, but as she turned to face him, he saw the differences. Her skin had a subtle luminescence, like moonlight through water, and her eyes held an inner light that shifted colors as she blinked. Silver markings traced patterns across her face that seemed to move in the ship's flickering light. She was pinned beneath a fallen section of the ship's interior, conscious but clearly injured. When she spoke, her voice seemed to resonate directly in his mind. You're human." The words carried a mix of pain and wonder. "I'm here to help," James replied, already assessing how to free her. "I'm James Harrison, rescue pilot. Can you understand me?" A slight smile crossed her face. "Yes. I am Thura, diplomatic envoy of the Centaurian Concordat. We were supposed to make first contact properly. Not like this." James couldn't help but smile back as he began working to lift the debris. "Well, I'd say crashing during the worst storm I've ever seen makes for a memorable first impression." Working together, they managed to free her legs. Thura tried to stand but stumbled, her luminescence flickering. James caught her, surprised by how light she felt despite her height matching his. "My ship's systems are failing," she said, her mental voice growing weaker. "The crash, it wasn't an accident. Someone knew I was coming. Someone didn't want me to reach your colony." The implications of her words were staggering, but James forced himself to focus on the immediate problem. "Right now, we need to get you out of here. Can you walk?" I think so, with help." She leaned against him, and James felt a curious tingling where their suits touched, as if her presence carried its own electric field. They made their way back through the alien ship as its lights began to fade. The storm outside had intensified, the wind howling like a living thing. James realized with growing concern that flying out might no longer be an option. "My shuttle has an emergency beacon," he said as they approached the exit. "If we can't take off, we can wait out the storm. The colony will send help once it passes." Thora's grip on his arm tightened. "No," she said, her mental voice urgent. "We cannot wait. The ones who damaged my ship, they will come to ensure their work is complete. We must reach your colony before they find us." James looked at her, seeing the fear and determination in her color-shifting eyes. In that moment, he made a decision that would change not only their lives but the course of human-alien relations forever. "Then we fly," he said, securing her into his shuttle's co-pilot seat. "Hold on tight, Ambassador. This is going to be one hell of a first contact story." As they lifted off into the heart of the storm, James couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just rescuing a crashed pilot, he was becoming part of something much bigger than himself. Something that would bridge the gap between two species and change the future of both forever. The Mars Colonial Medical Center wasn't designed with alien physiology in mind, but Dr. Reeves was doing her best. James watched through the observation window as the medical team worked to heal Thora's injuries, her luminescent skin casting ethereal patterns on the stark white walls. "Her cellular structure is fascinating," Dr. Reeves said, reviewing holographic scans. "She appears to be healing herself at an accelerated rate, but the process is depleting her energy reserves. Whatever hit her ship also affected her at a biological level." James frowned, remembering Thora's warning about sabotage. "Will she recover?" "Yes, but she needs time. And possibly something we don't have." Dr. Reeves gestured to the readings. "Her body seems to require trace elements that don't exist on Earth or Mars. Without them, her recovery will be slower." Before James could respond, Colonial Security Chief Richards burst into the observation room, his face tight with concern. "Harrison, we need to talk. Now." In the hallway, Richards didn't waste time. "Do you have any idea what you've done? We weren't supposed to make contact for another 3 months. There were protocols, preparations. Now we have half the Earth governments demanding explanations and the other half sending observers to Mars." "She would have died," James said simply. Richards ran a hand through his gray hair. "Maybe. Or maybe this was their plan all along. Get a foothold in our colony through our own compassion. The Centaurians have been watching us for decades, Harrison. They're not as innocent as they appear." Through the window, James watched Thora's chest rise and fall with each breath. "If they wanted to infiltrate us, they wouldn't have sent someone so conspicuous." "Just keep your distance," Richards warned. "That's an order. We'll handle the diplomatic situation." But keeping his distance proved impossible. As Thora recovered, she requested James's presence frequently, claiming that his energy signature helped stabilize her healing process. James suspected she was just lonely, surrounded by humans who treated her more like a specimen than a person. During their conversations, he learned about her world. The Centaurians were an old species, having achieved space travel millennia before humans left Earth. But their population was declining, their civilization stable but stagnant. They had been watching humanity's rapid advancement with growing interest. "Your species burns so bright," Thora told him one evening, her eyes shifting to deep blue. "In a few centuries, you've accomplished what took us millennia. Some of my people fear that fire will consume us. Others believe it might rekindle our own." James noticed she was shivering slightly. "Are you cold?" "Not in the way you understand it. My body requires certain wavelengths of light to maintain homeostasis. Your sun is different from what I'm accustomed to." Without hesitation, James shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The effect was immediate, her luminescence brightened, responding to his residual body heat. "Your kindness," she said softly, "it generates its own kind of light." Their moment was interrupted by an urgent knock. Dr. Reeves entered, her expression worried. "James, we have a problem. The latest scans show Thara's condition is deteriorating. Without the trace elements from her home system, her body can't complete the healing process." "There has to be something we can do," James insisted. Thara touched his arm gently. "There is. My ship's medical bay contains synthesized supplements. If anything survived the crash." "No," Richard said from the doorway, having overheard. "The crash site is off-limits. We have teams studying the wreckage." James stood up. "With all due respect, sir, those teams don't know what they're looking for. Thara can guide me." "Harrison, I warned you about getting too involved." "She'll die without those supplements," James argued, his voice rising. "Is that how we want humanity's first contact to end? With us letting an ambassador die because we're too afraid to trust?" Richard stared at him for a long moment. "You're not security cleared for this kind of operation." "I'm not asking for clearance." James met his superior's gaze steadily. "I'm telling you I'm going. Court-martial me later if you want." To everyone's surprise, Thara stood up, her luminescence pulsing with determination. "If James is punished for helping me, the Centaurian Concordat will consider it an act of diplomatic aggression." A tense silence filled the room. Finally, Richards laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Well played, Ambassador." He turned to James. "You have 6 hours. Take a security team. And Harrison? Watch your back out there. If someone really did sabotage her ship. They might still be watching," James finished. He looked at Thara, saw the worry in her color-shifting eyes. "Don't worry. I'll be back before you know it." As he headed to suit up for the mission, James couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a simple supply run. Every moment he spent with Thara seemed to draw him deeper into a web of interstellar politics and personal connection that both thrilled and terrified him. And somewhere out in the Martian desert, someone was watching, waiting to ensure that humanity and the Centaurians remained forever apart. The Martian night cast long shadows across the crash site as James and his security team approached Thara's ship. The storm had partially buried it in red dust, making it look like some ancient artifact emerging from the ground. Following Thara's mental guidance, transmitted through a prototype neural link, James made his way to what remained of the medical bay. "Something's wrong," Lieutenant Way whispered over the comm, "the wreckage has been disturbed. Someone's been here since the initial recovery team." James's helmet lights illuminated fresh boot prints in the dust. "Spread out. Keep your eyes open." As he worked to access the medical storage unit, a flash of movement caught his eye. "Contact, 3 o'clock." Way shouted, just as plasma bolts lit up the darkness. The security team responded immediately, their training kicking in as they took cover. James dove behind a twisted bulkhead, his heart pounding. Through the neural link, he felt Thara's panic. "We're under attack," he thought back to her. "But I'm close to the supplies." The attackers moved with military precision, using unknown technology that seemed to bend light around them. "Human tech with alien modifications," Way observed, returning fire. "These aren't amateurs." Taking advantage of the firefight, James sprinted to the medical bay. The storage unit was already open, its contents partially ransacked. He grabbed what remained of the luminescent vials, praying they were what Thara needed. A figure materialized beside him, wearing a stealth suit that rippled like oil on water. "Hand over the vials," a digitally distorted voice commanded. James turned slowly, raising his hands. "Why? Why try to kill her?" "Because some bridges shouldn't be built." The figure kept their weapon trained on James. "Humanity isn't ready for what the Centaurians offer. Their gifts come with chains." A shot rang out, catching the attacker in the shoulder. Way emerged from the shadows, her aim perfect. "Drop it." But instead of surrendering, the figure laughed. You think this ends with us? Terra Prime has cells everywhere. The Centaurians will never establish their foothold here. They pressed something on their wrist, and their stealth suit began to pulse with energy. Get down. Wei tackled James as the suit exploded, sending shrapnel flying. When the dust settled, the attacker was gone, leaving only scattered equipment behind. Back at the colony, as Dr. Reeves administered the recovered supplements to Thera, James and Richards reviewed the recovered tech with colonial intelligence. Terra Prime, Richards said, examining the stealth suit fragments. A radical human-first organization. They believe any alliance with alien species will lead to human subjugation. They're wrong, James insisted. Thera's people don't want to rule us. They need us. Perhaps that's what concerns them more. Director Winters of Colonial Intelligence stepped into the room. Our analysis of the Centaurian diplomatic documents recovered from the crash reveals something interesting. Their civilization is dying. James felt a cold weight in his stomach. What do you mean? Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, but they've lost something crucial, the drive to innovate, to explore. They've become static, eternal but unchanging. Until they found us. Winters brought up a holographic display showing human and Centaurian DNA side by side. Our species are surprisingly compatible. Some believe an alliance could revitalize their civilization. And Terra Prime thinks that means absorption or extinction, Richards concluded. There's more, Winters continued. We've intercepted communications suggesting Terra Prime isn't working alone. There's a faction among the Centaurians, called the Preservers, who oppose any contact with younger species. They believe isolation is the only way to maintain their civilization's purity. Through the neural link, which had grown stronger since James's rescue mission, he felt Thera's sadness. She had known some of this, had tried to protect him from the weight of it. But now, as he walked to her room, he understood the true significance of their growing connection. Thera was sitting up in bed, her luminescence almost restored to its full brilliance. You know now, she said as he entered. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed you to choose to help me for the right reasons. Not out of pity or duty. She held out her hand, and James took it, feeling the familiar electric tingle of her touch. What my people need isn't just your technology or your genes. We need your heart, your spirit. Your ability to hope and dream and fight for what you believe in. James sat beside her, their fingers intertwined. Terra Prime will try again. And they're not alone. No, she agreed. The Preservers have agents in every Centaurian colony and outpost. They'll do anything to prevent what they see as the contamination of our species. She squeezed his hand. But they fear something even more than human influence. What's that? Thera's eyes shifted to a deep violet color he'd never seen before. The proof that our species can be more than simply allies. That we can truly become one. Before James could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the colony. Richards burst into the room. We've got incoming ships. Lots of them. Some are Centaurian design, others look like Terra Prime vessels. He looked at James and Thera grimly. They're working together. And they're here to make sure your relationship doesn't inspire others to follow your example. The Mars colony's emergency bunkers were never meant to withstand a combined alien and human assault. James could feel the impacts reverberating through the reinforced walls as he helped Thera through the underground corridors. Behind them, Dr. Reeves rushed with a portable medical unit containing the remaining Centaurian supplements. The colony's defensive grid is holding, Richards reported through their comms, but not for long. They're using some kind of hybrid weapons technology. Our shields aren't designed for this. Through their neural link, James felt Thera's guilt washing over him. This isn't your fault, he thought to her. They're the ones who chose violence over understanding. Director Winters is preparing a shuttle in the emergency launch bay, Wei announced, taking point with her rifle ready. But we've got a problem. Terra Prime troops have already breached the upper levels. They're cutting their way down. A massive explosion rocked the facility, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. James's comm crackled with Richards's voice. They've landed a strike team on the surface. Preservers. They're like nothing we've ever seen. Our weapons barely slow them down. There's another way. The voice came from a side corridor, where a figure emerged from the shadows. James recognized the colonial maintenance worker, Roth, though he'd never spoken to him before. The old mining tunnels. They're not on any modern maps. Wei's rifle snapped up. Why should we trust you? Roth raised his hands slowly. Because I'm part of the underground. We've been preparing for something like this. He looked at Thera. Not all humans fear change. Some of us have been working with progressive Centaurians for years. Another explosion, closer this time. They had no choice. James made the decision. Lead the way. The mining tunnels were a maze of narrow passages, their walls still bearing the marks of early colonial mining equipment. Roth led them through with practiced ease, explaining as they moved. The underground started when we first detected Centaurian signals decades ago. Scientists, philosophers, dreamers, people who saw the potential in our species coming together. We have cells in every colony, every major Earth city. And Centaurian allies? Thera asked, her voice weak but curious. Roth nodded. The evolutionaries. They believe isolation has become a slow death for your people. They've been secretly sharing technology, helping us prepare. Their path emerged into a vast cavern that took James's breath away. Hidden in the darkness was a ship unlike anything he'd ever seen, a perfect fusion of human and Centaurian design. The Phoenix, Roth said proudly. First of her kind. Built by both our species, in secret. Dr. Reeves gasped. This is why certain materials kept disappearing from the medical center. You were building this. Among other things. Roth pressed his hand to a panel, and the ship hummed to life, its hull glowing with the same luminescence as Thera's skin. She's faster than anything Terra Prime or the Preservers have. She'll get you to Earth's orbital assembly. There are others waiting there, humans and Centaurians who'll stand with you. The cavern shook as explosions reached their level. Wei checked her tactical display. They're closing in. Multiple directions. Go, Roth said, drawing a weapon. The underground will hold them here. What you two represent, it's bigger than any of us. You're living proof our species can not only coexist but create something new together. As they hurried aboard the Phoenix, James felt Thera stumble. Through their link, he felt her energy fluctuating dangerously. Dr. Reeves immediately began connecting her to the ship's medical systems, which responded to her presence like they were part of her. The ship, Thera whispered, it's singing to me. Like it knows me. It does, Roth called from the cavern. It was designed to respond to both human and Centaurian biology. Together, you can fly her in ways neither species could alone. James took the pilot's seat, and the moment his hands touched the controls, he understood. The ship's systems merged with their neural link, creating a three-way connection that felt like completing a circuit. He could feel the Phoenix as an extension of their combined consciousness. The cavern ceiling exploded inward. Through the debris, James saw the Preservers descending, tall, luminescent figures wearing living armor that pulsed with ancient power. Behind them, Terra Prime troops moved in with weapons that crackled with stolen Centaurian energy. Now! Roth shouted, as he and other hidden underground members opened fire. Go! The Phoenix responded to James and Thera's joined thoughts, lifting off with impossible grace. The ship's hybrid shields deflected combined fire from both enemy forces as they shot through the collapsing cavern and into the Martian sky. But their pursuers weren't far behind. As they broke through the atmosphere, James saw multiple ships rising from the surface, the combined fleet of those who would keep their species apart forever. Through their enhanced connection, Thera shared her knowledge of space combat while James contributed his pilot's instincts. The Phoenix moved like a living thing, dancing through enemy fire as they made their run for Earth. More ships approaching, Wei reported from the tactical station. But, they're not hostile. They're broadcasting underground recognition codes. James watched in awe as vessels of both human and Centaurian design emerged from hiding, moving to intercept their pursuers. The underground and the evolutionaries had indeed been preparing. "We're not alone," Thera said, her hand finding his as they flew through the battle. "We never were." As the Phoenix raced toward Earth, carrying hope for both their species, James realized that this wasn't just about saving Thera anymore, or even about their love. They were carrying the future itself, a future where humanity's fire and the Centaurians' wisdom could forge something greater than either species could achieve alone. Behind them, the battle for that future had begun. Earth's orbital assembly was humanity's greatest achievement, a sprawling structure of steel and glass that served as neutral ground for all of Earth's nations. Now, as the Phoenix approached through a gauntlet of pursuing ships, it would become the battlefield for humanity's future. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL, Wei announced from tactical. Centaurian diplomatic vessels, and preserver warships. Terra Prime shuttles launching from the lunar bases. Through their neural link, James felt Thera's determination crystallize into something harder than diamond. "We can't run anymore," she thought to him. "This ends here." James guided the Phoenix toward the assembly's diplomatic dock, their pursuers close behind. Dr. Reeves monitored Thera's vital signs, which had strengthened thanks to the ship's integrated medical systems. "Whatever you're planning," she said, "do it fast." The assembly's defense grid activated as they approached, but to everyone's surprise, the weapons remained silent. A familiar voice came through their comm, "Phoenix, you are cleared for emergency docking. Underground assets are in position. Director Winters." James recognized the voice of Colonial Intelligence's leader. "You're with the underground. Someone had to keep Terra Prime from discovering them." Winters's voice was tight with tension. "The Assembly's Grand Chamber is prepared. Every news outlet in the solar system is watching. If you're going to change hearts and minds, now's the time." The Phoenix docked with seconds to spare. As they rushed through the Assembly's corridors, they could hear the sounds of battle, Terra Prime forces clashing with underground defenders, preservers fighting their way through security checkpoints. The Grand Chamber doors opened to reveal a scene of chaos. Diplomatic representatives from Earth's nations were shouting over each other as Centaurian officials argued in their resonant mental voices. On the massive screens overhead, live footage showed the space battle unfolding around the station. James and Thera stepped into the chamber, their neural link radiating a visible aura that made everyone fall silent. Dr. Reeves and Wei took up protective positions as Winters emerged from the crowd. "The Assembly is witness," Winters announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. "And through our broadcasts, Earth and all Centaurian worlds watch." A tall Centaurian figure stepped forward, his luminescence marking him as a high elder. "Thera, daughter of the Concordat, you stand accused of violating our most sacred laws. Contaminating our genetic purity. Your laws are killing us," Thera interrupted, her mental voice reaching every mind in the chamber. "Look at what humanity has achieved in mere centuries. Look at what we've created together." She gestured to the Phoenix visible through the chamber's windows. "This ship is proof of what we can become. Proof of our degradation," a Terra Prime leader countered. "Humanity doesn't need alien influence corrupting our natural evolution." "Natural evolution is influence," James stepped forward. "Every species grows by adapting, by changing, by learning from others. Isolation isn't purity, it's stagnation." Through their link, James and Thera joined hands, and something extraordinary happened. Their combined energy created a display that everyone in the chamber could see, a vision of possible futures. In one, both species remained apart, each slowly declining in their own way. In another, they came together, their strengths combining to create something entirely new. This is what the preservers truly fear, Thera declared. Not that we'll contaminate each other, but that we'll transcend our limitations together. An explosion rocked the chamber as the last preserver and Terra Prime forces broke through. They raised their weapons, but froze at what they saw. The aura around James and Thera had expanded, touching others in the room. Where it passed, humans and Centaurians found themselves briefly linked, experiencing each other's thoughts and feelings. This is what we can be, James said into the stunned silence. Not just allies. Not just friends. But truly united, while still celebrating our differences. The High Elder stepped into the aura voluntarily, his ancient eyes widening at what he felt. So much life, he whispered. So much passion. We had forgotten. One by one, others stepped forward, humans and Centaurians, feeling for the first time what true unity could mean. Even some of the Terra Prime soldiers lowered their weapons, overwhelmed by the shared vision. The time of isolation is over, Thera announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the solar system through the broadcasts. We stand here as proof that love knows no planetary bounds, that the future belongs to those brave enough to reach across the stars and take another's hand. Through their link, James felt the moment the tide turned. It wasn't just their love that convinced them, it was the possibility they represented. The promise of a future where humanity's determination and the Centaurians' wisdom could solve problems neither species could handle alone. The assembly erupted in discussion, but this time it wasn't angry shouting. Representatives from both species began proposing frameworks for cooperation, for exchange programs, for joint scientific ventures. The underground and evolutionaries emerged from hiding, sharing their successes and discoveries. As the chaos of positive change swirled around them, James turned to Thera. Think we started something? Her eyes shifted through colors he'd never seen before, beautiful beyond description. We didn't start it, beloved. We just showed them what was possible. The rest is up to them. And us? He pulled her closer. What's our next mission? Thera smiled, her luminescence harmonizing with his human warmth. To prove that this is only the beginning. That the greatest adventures happen when we dare to love beyond the stars. Above them, through the chamber's massive windows, the first rays of Earth's sun appeared over the horizon, illuminating humans and Centaurians standing together, planning a future that neither species could have imagined alone. A future born from one simple truth, that love, real love, transcends every boundary we create, even those between the stars themselves.